Senate Commerce is now in session. Dan, writes in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Senator Ennis. Good morning. We're going to start off with Senate Bill 97 FN.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cameron Lapine, and I'm the legislative aide for Senator David Waters. Unfortunately, due to the weather, Senator Waters is unable to be here this morning, and he asked me to introduce Senate Bill 97 FN on his behalf. Senate Bill 97 FN prohibits the use of animals in certain product testing and enables the Attorney General to bring a civil suit against persons using animals in certain product testing. Senator Waters would respectfully request that Kurt Ehrenberg from the Humane Society testify next, as he can speak to the specifics of the bill. With that, I would respectfully request that you hold any questions for speakers who may come after me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Ehrenberg, come on down. Nice to see you this morning. Welcome to Commerce.
Good morning, Chairman Gannon and committee members. I'm Kurt Ehrenberg. I was not aware Senator Waters would be waylaid by the snow, but I understand, having come over from Portsmouth this morning. So my name's Kurt Ehrenberg. I'm the state director of the Humane Society of the United States. We represent thousands of New Hampshire citizens, people all over the world who care about animals, and we represent all animals in New Hampshire. I'm going to read my testimony. I hope you have it. I believe you do. I appreciate the opportunity to submit this written testimony on behalf of the Humane Society of the United States and our New Hampshire members and supporters. And we're urging the committee to pass Senate Bill 97. This legislation requires manufacturers and contract testing facilities to use test methods that replace animal testing when they are available and provide information of equivalent or better scientific quality and relevance. It also requires reporting on the use of traditional animal methods and alternatives. The bill applies to products such as cosmetics, household cleaners, drugs, medical alternatives. The bill applies to products such as cosmetics, household cleaners, drugs, medical devices, pesticides, and industrial chemicals. The bill does not prohibit the use of animal tests to comply with specific requirements of state or federal agencies. So that's important to note. Limitations of animal testing. Many of the traditional animal test methods still in use today were developed decades ago and do not represent the best that 21st century science has to offer. No longer considered the gold standard of testing, animal models carry serious scientific limitations. Different species can respond differently when exposed to the same chemicals. Consequently, results from animal tests may not be relevant to humans, under or overestimating real-world health hazards. It should not be surprising, therefore, that more than 90% of human drugs fail during clinical trials after having completed extensive animal studies. These failures are due to unexpected toxicity in human patients or lack of efficacy. Animal tests are not only inaccurate, but also, this is important, they're incredibly cruel. In traditional animal tests, dogs, rabbits, non-human primates, mice, and rats have substances forced down their throats or into their lungs, dropped into their eyes, or smeared onto their skin. Thousands of animals may be used for a single test, and they can suffer for months or years before being killed. Mice, rats, and birds who have been purpose-bred for research make up roughly 95% of animals used in research and testing, and yet they are excluded from even the most minimal protections of the Animal Welfare Act. Given the cruelty of animal tests, it is imperative that companies switch to alternative methods as soon as they have been approved for use. And that's all we're asking for is alternative methods that have been approved be used rather than these cruel animal tests. That's what this bill is. And I'll just continue, and I thank you for your indulgence. Fortunately, the outdated and inhumane tests are being replaced with non-animal testing strategies that more closely mimic how the human body responds to drugs and chemical substances. The National Toxicology Program Interagency Center for the Evaluation of Alternative Toxicological Methods provides a list of more than 100 methods or guidance documents that completely replace or reduce animal use that are accepted by U.S. agencies on its website. As just one example from this list, comprehensive studies have shown that non-animal approaches to test chemicals for the likelihood of causing skin allergies are more reliable predictors of human outcomes than the typical animal test methods. Unlike traditional animal test methods, sophisticated non-animal approaches to toxicity testing will only continue to improve. The future of non-animal science includes organs on chips, which are tiny 3D chips created from human cells that look and function like miniature human organs. Organs on chips are used to determine how human systems respond to different drugs or chemicals and to find out exactly what happens during infection or disease. Several organs representing heart, liver, lungs, or kidneys, for example, can be linked together through a microfluidic circulatory system to create an integrated human-on-a-chip model that lets researchers access multi-organ responses. Now, that's beyond me, but it's not cruel to animals, I know that. So, passage of SB 97 would bring New Hampshire in line with 4 other states that have already passed similar laws: Virginia, New Jersey, New York, and California. In 2016, Congress revised the Toxic Substances Control Act, which included a provision directing the Environmental Protection Agency to reduce and replace the use of animals in chemical testing. And in 2019, EPA announced that it would reduce mammal study requests by 30% by 2025 and end reliance on tests using mammals entirely by 2035. Other federal agencies, such as the Food and Drug Administration, Consumer Product Safety Commission, and the Department of Defense, are also actively pursuing research and development of new non-animal methods. In addition, 10 states and 42 countries have passed laws to end the use of animals in cosmetics testing. New Hampshire should be a scientific and technological leader in non-animal alternatives, and we can be. 21st century science is rapidly moving away from outdated animal tests. As many faster, less expensive, and more human-relevant alternative methods have become available, including artificial human tissue, organs on chips, and sophisticated computer programs. SB 97 will ensure that companies in New Hampshire are taking advantage of these new testing strategies as soon as they are approved for use. HSUS strongly supports SB 97 and urges the committee to pass this legislation to make New Hampshire the next state to ensure the replacement of cruel animal tests with modern human-relevant tests, methods, and strategies. Thank you again for listening to that long.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just a quick question for you. Would you say that at this point in our science, that testing sometimes is still the most reliable way to protect humanity? Sometimes.
There are, if it is, it's written, it's in the bill that you can do it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Senator Riccardi.
Good morning. Thank you for your testimony. The organs on the chips, can you explain to me how that's harvested? Where does these cells come from?
I can't tell you. I mean, it's beyond me, as I said. I'm not a scientist. I don't understand exactly how it works. I'd be happy to look into it further for you or anyone on the committee that's interested in that. I'm interested in it, frankly. So let's do that. But I really can't answer that for you now.
Okay, and follow up? The other question I had is New Hampshire capable of this? Do we have the qualified people to do this?
I believe that, and I believe that it would not be a major lift, but we do, I believe, have the Attorney General's office here to testify on
Thank you.
those matters. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Thanks, Senator.
Anyone else? No, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm Mary Stewart from the Attorney General's office, and as you know, the enforcement of this bill is exclusively vested with the Attorney General. So I'm not here in support of or to oppose this bill, simply to alert you to our concerns regarding our ability to enforce the statute with our current staff and expertise. Number one, this bill is essentially creating a new enforcement arm for the Attorney General. It's not something we've historically done in the past. So we would, at a minimum, need additional personnel to take this on. We don't have any idea how much this is a problem, if there would be a lot of complaints filed under this, but we would need an attorney to evaluate that, support staff, and probably an investigator to assist with that analysis. Even once properly staffed, we have two, a testing facility is violating this statute. So the first concern is the Attorney General has no subpoena power under this statute. Subpoena power is what allows us to essentially mandate a facility, provide us with information, as part of an investigation to help us to determine if there's a violation, because all we have at this point is a consumer complaint. A case that's filed under this bill as written would follow what I would consider the typical civil litigation process, which is you allege in a complaint sufficient facts to support the laws being violated, and then you proceed under the normal discovery process. It's not how we typically do things in the Consumer Protection Bureau. We normally have subpoena power so we can make those determinations before, which raises to the final issue, which is really the biggest concern we have, is in order to evaluate a case and most definitely to prove a case, we would need a person with knowledge in this area to be able to testify. Somebody who knows current animal testing methods, whether there are appropriate alternative test methods that have been approved by validating bodies, such as the Interagency Coordinating Committee on the Validation of Alternative Methods. We would also need to know the person would need to know who the regulating agency is and whether the agency has granted a waiver of the current test method that's been using. So in other words, it's a person who has knowledge that's not common knowledge or an expert. So in every case, really to evaluate a case and most definitely to prove a case, we would need expert testimony. Attorney can't be an expert in their own case. And this type of case really could not be proven in court without expert testimony. So in summary, if this bill is passed, the legislature would need to be prepared to budget for the additional resources that we would need to enforce the bill, if you would like us to enforce it effectively, personnel for the office, as well as funding for experts that would be needed to evaluate and enforce the law. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Seeing none, you're all set.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for your testimony. Sean Thomas, come on down. Morning, Mr. Thomas. How you doing? People say that's good when it happens to me.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Sean Thomas with Demers and Praisall. I am here today on behalf of Pharma the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. So I will say first that we generally agree with the intent of Senate Bill 97, but oppose it as drafted. I've handed out a statement which details our concerns and includes our suggestions to address those concerns. So I'll keep this brief, but basically our concerns are technical in nature. Right now, certain parts of the bill don't align with, we don't think they align with the requirements in federal law, particularly with respect to the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and FDA regulations. And this is really limited to two places in Senate Bill 97, both in the definition section. One, the definition of biomedical research, and the other, the definition of alternative test method. So Senate Bill 97 seems to carve out biomedical research, but biomedical research, the definition, doesn't specifically mention the development of drugs or devices. And this is important because some pre-approval drug or device testing in animals may still be necessary to ensure the drug or device is both safe and effective for human use. On the alternative test method, currently, the definition as written in Senate Bill 97, the method need only be validated by a validation body or adopted by the FDA. And we think this should be an and, because otherwise this could be read broadly to require an alternative test method as long as one exists, regardless of whether or not it's FDA approved for that particular purpose. So I think these are more or less clarifications and seem to be consistent, I think, with what I heard from Mr. Ehrenberg testify to. I think, he kind of described the bill this way. Simply, they're asking if there's an alternative test method that it be used. And I think our clarifications or technical corrections, I think, are consistent with that as well. So again, you have the statement, which includes our suggestions to address those concerns. But we would be very happy, obviously, to work with the sponsor, with Senator Waters, or with the committee to work on an amendment. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Anyone have any questions? I think that's a great idea. If you work with Senator Waters, sounds good to me. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to testify on 97? Seeing none? Thank you. Thank you. Did you read these? Yes. Thanks. Senator Richard, do you want to introduce the bill for me? We have no one here, so all you do is just read the analysis. That'd be great. Oh, he is. Oh. He's here. 98. I'm sorry. Did I get the right one? 98. Did you sign in? Oh, okay. How you doing, Senator Murphy? Good to see you today.
All right, sir. How are you?
Doing great.
Good, good. So the short story with this bill is that it updates a number in the law that hasn't been changed in several decades. The longer story, and I'll keep it to under 2 minutes, is that the beer distributors in New Hampshire benefit from a little quirk in state law that essentially says that anyone who doesn't pay their bill to the distributors within 2 weeks has their business reported to the Liquor Commission, which maintains a list. And once you're on the list, you can't get any deliveries from any distributors until you're off the list. So it's great for them that they have that benefit of the law. The issue is that, which is bad for them, is that if they don't report that licensee to the commission, and then let's say 6 months later they get audited by the commission, and this frequently happens, and they should have reported it and didn't, then they get a fine, which they don't like. So it's to the point where $100, which is the current number in the law, is 2 cases of beer sometimes. It's really not very much. And it's not even worth their time to go chasing down an operator for a check for 2 or 3 cases of beer. So this bill simply changed that number to 250, and I believe the distributors approve of the bill. They don't. There's no opposition. So we're just updating the number.
Thank you, Senator. Does anyone have any questions? Senator Ennis.
Senator Murphy, is $250 high enough? I mean, yeah, it's 2.5 times what it was, but it's still a pretty modest number.
It's a very modest number. I would rather see it higher. That was a number that I ran past the distributors, and they gave it the thumbs up. And I didn't come here to take one in industry. So
One step at a time. All right, thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no other questions, have a great day.
thank you. Well, I'm on the next bill, but I'll wait.
Oh, okay. You're just everywhere today. I don't know about these $100 cases of beer, but anyways. Okay. Okay, we'll close the hearing on SB 98. I'm a Pappas Blue Ribbon guy.
So I brought this bill forward as the request of one of my constituents. The situation he presented was this. He had a salaried person manager start at his business halfway through a pay period. He had a biweekly pay period. And the employee manager worked out that pay period. The next pay period started on a Monday. At the end of the day, on that Monday, he came to the employer and said, "I've decided that I'm going to take a different job. So I'm going to give my notice, 2 weeks." And the employer said, "You've only been here for 5 days. Don't worry about it. Let's go ahead and part ways. Good luck to you." Well, the manager then went to the Labor Commission and said, "Well, he didn't take my notice. He told me to leave. That converts my quit to a fire. And under the law, I'm entitled to 2 weeks pay." And he took that to the Labor Commission, and the commission agreed with him. And the employer had to write the employee a check for 2 weeks of pay for not taking the notice. This, to me, is a case of an agency not applying the law as it was intended. I don't believe the legislature would ever have intended in this situation for someone to be paid 2 weeks after they said, "I quit." So that's why the bill is in. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Let me understand this. So the employer said, or the employee said, was giving notice and intended to work another 2 weeks, or no?
In the situation I described, the employee intended to work out the rest of that pay period, which was another 13 days.
Okay. So, and the if I may follow up. So the employer then said, as I'm hearing you, it does sound like the employer was in fact firing the person. I might be misunderstanding, but if the employee says, "Here's my notice and I plan to work," and the employer says, "No, don't work," or "You cannot work," I'm not sure I'm understanding what the situation
So
is.
in the situation I described, for one, perhaps this was a unique circumstance because the person was 5 days into their employment. But secondly, when somebody says, "I'm quitting," to me, it's a quit. If the employer then says, you don't need to work out the rest of your notice, I don't believe that magically transforms the quit into a fire.
Okay. And one more follow-up. So if it's not then a fire and the employer says to the employee, "You do not need to work any longer," but there was no indication, or there needs to be no indication, but I won't pay you for the rest of your time?
If the bill were to pass, the employer would not need to pay the employee the 2 weeks to not be there.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on her line of questioning?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now I've worked somewhere 10 years and I give my 2 weeks notice and you say, "You can go now." So are you saying that I'm trying to be a good employee and giving you 2 weeks notice so you can fill the thing, but you're saying the employer then can take that as an immediate termination that I'm quitting on the spot there, and then they wouldn't give me 2 weeks pay? Correct? At 10 years even, so you're telling employees to not give notice, right? Just,
Well, that would be at the
Just leave the day
discretion.
you wanna-
That would be at the discretion of the employer, as you just said.
okay.
My understanding, from my experience, when scenarios like this usually happen, if you have somebody work somewhere for 10, 15, 20 years, and then gives notice, it's for more than 2 weeks, which is why there's a 14-day limit in the bill. If they say, "Hey, I'm going to give you my notice, my last day is going to be June 1st, that wouldn't apply.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Andreas, do you have a question? Give you 10 more seconds.
If
Think about
there's
it.
any amendment that you would suggest for the bill, I'd be happy to support it.
Okay, well, great. Thank you, Senator Murphy.
Thank you, sir.
And does anyone else wish to testify in this legislation? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Murphy. Have a great day. Yeah, we are in recess for 11 minutes. I am closing the last hearing. Now we're on recess. We'll get it down to about a month. in session. We're going to hear Senate Bill 102. The Honorable Senator Murphy is before us. Go ahead, Senator Murphy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. So the vocabulary word of the day is curtilage. Curtilage
I know.
is domestic shipping from port to port in the same country. Curtilage has been strictly regulated by the federal government since 1920 with the passage of the Jones Act. Port with ships that are built in the United States with U.S. labor, that are crewed by U.S. sailors, and are flagged in the United States. This made some sense, perhaps, in 1920, when the United States was the world's premier shipbuilder and had a thriving merchant marine. At one point, this country had almost 1,000 shipyards churning out vessels. At this point, we have 3 shipyards in the United States. 2 of them focus primarily on repairs. Almost every ship that qualifies for the Jones Act are, on coastal waters, are tugboats. The cargo vessels that qualify, that ship internationally, cargo ships now, is under 100. So, a law of supply and demand, right? Everything that, when supply is limited but demand is strong, prices go up. And when I filed this bill back in December, if you recall, I heard it from my constituents. I know you heard it from yours. Heating oil was a major concern. How are we going to heat our houses? I heat my house on oil. I cut back tremendously by relying on other fuel sources, but not everyone has that option. And I was legitimately concerned, and I still am, about the cost of heating oil. We were hearing prices maybe $6 to $8 a gallon. So far, it's been a mild winter, notwithstanding the storm we just had, and prices haven't skyrocketed quite as much as we had feared. So, in essence, what this bill does is it asked the department to generate a report as to the cost of the Jones Act, the effect of the Jones Act on heating oil prices and energy prices in general. The more energy we can generate from whatever source, the lower our heating prices will be, the lower our energy prices will be. If oil vessels, if cargo vessels could come into Boston or into Portsmouth or into Portland from other U.S. ports, that would ostensibly increase supplies and lower prices. If we had a 10-year look back and we could say, well, maybe if we had that pipeline across southern New Hampshire, maybe if we had a northern pass, or maybe if we had energy coming in from somewhere else, maybe Vermont wouldn't have shut down Vermont Yankee if we'd known this was all going to happen. But here we are with a serious energy crisis. And I don't see it getting any better. So not to tackle a huge, huge problem with one little bill. This is simply asking for the department to generate a number as to what it cost our citizens for the federal government to comply with the Jones Act. So the president is empowered to waive the Jones Act, and he has done so. Various presidents have done so in times of emergency. Alaska's had waivers. Florida's had waivers. Puerto Rico has had waivers. So the idea is that if this number ends up being a high number, that just lends energy to our effort to ask the president to waive it for us. Can I answer any questions, sir? I know it's a big issue and a long issue, and I'm trying to get a lot into a little.
You can just tell me on
window.
the Jones Act for Dummies type of little guide here. So I heard from Maureen, this guy, Captain Dick Holt, had sent us something last night that we all read, I think, and we just got it now.
I spoke to him yesterday.
Okay, and so he's telling me that there's 120 coastal barges, 65 tankers, 195 barrels are voyaging into New England. And he's telling me that there's a thriving industry with 650,000 people, 40,000 U.S. flag vessels. Is this, so just help me with the Jones Act. Is this just domestic, or is this to take off so we can take, you want ships that are non-U.S. ships, non-U.S. sailors, those type of things? Just a little more background for me on the bill.
I understand. The Jones Act already allows international vessels to come into U.S. ports.
Okay.
It does not allow it doesn't allow U.S. It allows international vessels to come directly from other ports, from other nations, that you couldn't stop in, say, Newark and then come to Boston.
Okay.
International ships. Only domestic ships can do that. So every international cargo ship basically is on a one-way trip. Does
Okay.
that make
Okay.
sense?
Senator Shandy.
Thank you for your testimony. So I know in 2022, like you mentioned, Puerto Rico had a waiver because of the hurricane. So being this federal law, we really can't change it unless the president gave us the waiver. So I just want to be clear, this is only to ask for a waiver to be able to get, reduce our energy costs, because waivers are temporary, they're not permanent. And you're just trying to get the number to see if it's feasible. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator. This bill doesn't even ask for the waiver because we don't have the power to even ask for the waiver. It simply tries to get a number to lend, perhaps, if justified. If the number justifies getting a waiver, it would lend energy to that effort.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Ennis? No. Okay. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you very much. I need to understand a little bit better the Jones Act, but I certainly am wondering if you mentioned that it made sense in the 20s because we had a strong shipbuilding industry. But I'm imagining that there is a defense component to the law when it was written and may it may be part of why it continues to be in force. Would I be wrong to make that assumption?
It is true that in 1920, the merchant marine was viewed as a component of national defense. And you think back to World War I, and the Jones Act immediately followed World War I. The ability to move goods and services across and staff and across the ocean to Europe was viewed as critical. And civilian ships were routinely pressed into service. If that situation were to happen today, we don't have the ships necessary to do that. The Chinese generate over 100,000 cargo ships a year, and we produce virtually none. I think you could say that we would, as a nation, perhaps be in deep trouble if there were that sort of mobilization that was required again. But that's far and above that's far outside the purview of the bill. We can't try to tackle that effort here. I would love to see shipbuilding return to the United States. I'd love to see all that manufacturing come back. But you and I can't control that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Senator Murphy, I don't think we have any other questions. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
This is 102. Bob Scully. You here, Scully?
For the record, my name is Bob Scully. I'm president of the New Hampshire Motor Transport Association and also represent the Energy Markets Association of New Hampshire. I've got two articles distributed on the Jones Act pretty thoroughly. You can take a look at them. One is from the Boston Globe and the other is from the American Trade Magazine. They both go into pretty good detail.
Thank you.
What the Jones Act does. Now, Senate Bill 102, I think he's just looking for how the Jones Act impacts potentially us here. So very briefly, born in 1920, the Jones Act was to do exactly what Senator Murphy said at that time. But even today, if we had a need for fuel oil in New England, we could not bring it up from the Gulf Coast with a ship other than one from the United States. Most of the time, that's not a problem. So the short story is, if you're looking to try to increase supply, potentially lower costs for your constituents and the folks. Sorry about that. In the state of New Hampshire, it would take an act of Congress to change the Jones Act. I mean, waivers are one thing we're talking about, but if you wanted to change it so it's actually more practical for how we get fuel here and help with reserves and help try to lower the cost for your constituents, I believe totally that you need to change the law. I do believe that Senator Shaheen was trying to work on that, along with Senator King, and you'll notice a reference in one of those articles that I gave to you to do that. It's a very challenging task. The support for the Jones Act community is not limited to one party, okay, or one location necessarily. Most of the oil we're talking about to bring up here comes from the Gulf Coast. So I would support the bill, to take a look at it, to try to get the data, what you do with it after that. And that purpose of this bill doesn't change anything in the Jones Act. From what I can tell, it just gives you the data that you're looking for. But it is a huge uphill undertaking if you're trying to do that. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
Senator Ennis?
Just a quick question. What impact would this have on the trucking industry or the rail industry in the region? Any? I look at it and I say, well, you know, MSKIP coming from Iceland to Portland, right? Right now, that's where it ends. So their containers might get moved by truck to, say, New York, or by train to New York. That would go away if they could stop in Portland and then bop down to New York, New Jersey.
So for New Hampshire, if everything goes well, all our transports go to the Newington/Boston area to get the product, but mostly Newington. We have two large wholesalers there, Sprague and Irving, okay?
Yeah.
Irving's actually comes in from a pipeline down from Canada, and Sprague comes over from
by rail.
The barges.
Barges or
Yeah,
rail?
water barges.
Okay.
And if I remember right, in Senate Bill 102, they referenced the war in Ukraine, okay? And one of the reasons for the high price in product is when those barges were coming over, they were getting 7 times more per barge to send those barges to Europe because Russia was no longer supplying them with product.
Are you at all familiar with the C3 facility in Portsmouth?
I know where it is, yeah.
Yeah, they're receiving propane, is that right?
Yeah.
By rail and then export. So no impact on them.
No, this is mainly the liquid product for the oil.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Scully.
Mr.
Seeing no other
Chairman.
questions? Josh Elliott, come on down.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Josh Elliott, the Director of the Division of Policy and Programs at the New Hampshire Department of Energy. The department is neutral on this bill. Excuse me. So I'm going to just do a little bit of discussion around the Jones Act, and sort of you've heard some of the discussion already. What you have coming around before you is a letter that was sent by all 6 New England governors to the Secretary of Energy, Secretary Granholm in Washington, requesting a Jones Act waiver for LNG, or liquefied natural gas import specifically, into the region. So as you've seen, as has been mentioned before, the only type of LNG that can come into the region shipped by tanker has to be on a Jones Act compliant vessel if it's coming from the U.S., or it has to be a foreign flagged vessel if it is in order to actually dock and to offload its cargo into the New England region. So usually what happens is during the winter time, the natural gas supply is constrained coming into New England. It's a function of the pipeline capacity. There's only so much room in a pipeline. It comes up. With the increase in demand in the wintertime, there are firm contracts by the natural gas distribution utilities, so it's either Liberty or Northern or Unitil out on the seacoast. So they have firm contracts for that pipeline supply. The natural gas generators purchase the excess capacity off of that pipeline. So at some point, during cold winter months, you have an increase in the demand on that
natural gas for home heating. They have firm contracts, and there's less and less gas available in the pipeline for electric generation. So what usually ends up happening is either those plants don't run, and Merrimack down the road goes online because they've got coal, they've got it on site, or you have oil generation, other sorts of more carbon intensive energy generation comes online. So the backup option is that, because New Hampshire, or the New England region, is pretty much foreclosed on any additional expansion into pipeline capacity. They have LNG tankers, liquefied natural gas tankers, come into Boston. There's a buoy there where they then can backfill the New England region with extra natural gas in order to bring prices down and to allow some of that other generation to come online. So obviously, you have other major geopolitical events, war in Ukraine, et cetera. All of those LNG tankers are all going to Europe so they can fill those stockpiles as well as feed into their own distribution networks. So where does that leave us? So there are only two options. Again, as I mentioned, it's either foreign gas or it's domestic gas on a Jones Act compliant vessel. For foreign gas, actually, believe it or not, it comes up from Trinidad and Tobago. You wouldn't think of the Caribbean as being a major natural gas exporter, but they sort of sit on the same geologic formation that allows Venezuela to be an oil exporter. So here's the rub when it comes to the Jones Act, when it specifically comes to LNG. Those vessels don't exist. There is not a single LNG tanker that is Jones Act compliant. There have been 16 that have been built that would, in theory, be Jones Act compliant. 4 of them have been scrapped. 6 of them are now flagged for the Marshall Islands. 2 of them are flagged for Malawi, and 3 of them are flagged for the Bahamas. So they no longer, in theory, a U.S. Carrier could, in theory, purchase those vessels and then reflag them and recrew them as U.S. In order to be compliant with the Jones Act. Now, that being said, it's impossible for any of this LNG to come in from Texas or the Gulf Coast or anywhere like that, as Mr. Scully referenced. It all comes from overseas sources. So that being said, literally out of all these, as the letter that you had mentioned from this particular captain may have said, for certain other fuels, yes, for gasoline, for diesel, yeah, there's certainly other flagged vessels, but for LNG, these vessels do not exist. And the ones that do exist, literally the last one was built in 1980. No Jones Act compliant vessels have been built since 1980. So that being said, getting to the actual context of the bill, again, the department is neutral. We're tasked with doing this study. I would like to highlight 2 things for the committee. On line 25, it just specifies the impact of the Jones Act to heating and energy markets. We assume the department presumes that this is reference to the economic impacts of the act on the region, or on New Hampshire, I should say. There is the question of the funding source to actually do this study. So these are not, the department doesn't feel as though we have the in-house expertise. We don't have any Jones Act compliant experts employed by the Department of Energy. So we would need some source of funding to go for an outside consultant in order to do this sort of study. We would also ask that, just in the process that it takes the state in order to do some things sometimes, we would be required to draw up an RFP or request for proposal for such a contract. That would have to then go out. We'd have to allow appropriate time for somebody to bid in on the project, and then it goes through the governor and council process. So in addition to a funding source in order to do this, it would be helpful if the report date were pushed out a little bit further, maybe to the end of June of 2024, just to ensure that there's adequate time for the state processing of being actually be able to do the study, engage with a consultant, and then actually go through the process. So with that, I know I've said a lot. I will stop and happy to take any questions.
You did say a lot. Any questions? Seeing none.
Stunned silence. Okay.
Thank you.
So, and again, I'm happy to work with the prime sponsor on both the funding source and then maybe putting a little bit of finer point on what is looked for to make sure the department is not making any assumptions and the legislative intent is completely clear.
Very good. Would you contact Mr. Murphy?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a good day. Does anyone else wish to testify on SB 102? Seeing none? Thank you. Unless you don't want to, you can do whatever you want. Okay. I'm pretty loose.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. For the record, I'm Denise Ricciardi, State Senator for District 9. This bill, I'll read my testimony to you, is RSA 402H:6. This requires insurance carriers to conduct semi-annual audits of each contracted third-party administrator, TPA, that administers benefits for more than 100 certificate holders. Currently, at least one of these audits must be on-site. Senate Bill 99 would remove the on-site requirement. The COVID-19 pandemic led to a rapid implementation of virtual business practices. During this time, the New Hampshire Insurance Department, like that of most other states, gave insurance companies temporary allowance to conduct their TPA audits virtually. The success of virtual audits makes permanent modernization of TPA audit laws both prudent and timely. Since insurance carriers are ultimately accountable for the TPAs with whom they contract, it is an insurer's best interest to complete effective, comprehensive audits. In-person audits are a small part of the overall ongoing TPA monitoring that carriers undertake throughout the year. When an insurer does conduct an in-person audit, most of the work is actually done virtually, prior to and after an on-site visit. Little substantive auditing work is done in person. Virtual audits allow insurers to observe TPA staff where they primarily work in the digital realm. Virtual audits are more accurate, inclusive, and efficient than in-person audits. Insurers should have the discretion to decide whether an audit would be more effective virtually or in person. Thank you.
Senator, do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Senator. Jill Richard. Rickard? How do you say the last name? Rickard. Okay, well, I was way off. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jill Rickard, and I'm here on behalf of the American Council of Life Insurers. Thank you for having me. I am basically here to answer any questions. This is pretty straightforward. It's just continuing the practice of the insurance department post-pandemic, when many companies, including these TPAs, no longer have physical office space. And to satisfy the requirement, some of our member companies have had to either work with the TPA to rent a temporary office space or meet in a restaurant, et cetera. And the virtual audit process did work well during the pandemic and continues to do so. I'll also mention that we did reach out to the insurance department this fall, and they agree that the process worked well during the pandemic, and they have no issue with this continuing permanently.
Thank you very much. Yes, we do have a question. Good.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question, and that is, if you know, what was the expected advantage of conducting one of these on site?
I think that's been the case for a long time when the TPAs did have the physical office space, and I think it's just to conduct a physical check of, are you using screensavers to protect personal data? Are you locking your computer when you're away? Do you have locks on the door? Just the sort of physical safeguards of data.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. That'll conclude SB 99. We'll take a break for 5 minutes.
I don't have time to make coffee, do
You do?
we do?
Yeah, because I'll wait an extra minute for you. I want you awake. Oh, this is more contentious. She'll give me one more week. I think she will.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. If she won't, I'll let you know.
I give it a inclusion of information.
Yes. No, no, I've seen some. I haven't, I need things printed out for me.
I don't want to hear words.
It's gonna rain.
Water that we did down here.
We got a lot. A foot and a half, maybe. And more coming
Oh,
tomorrow.
where's Bradford? Give me a better.
Georgie, London, Henniker.
Yes, oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Post Henniker.
Okay, I sort of should know more. I've driven through. Good to see you.
Well, you know, our town sign says we're the gateway to the sun. So that means we ain't got much going.
We're drive over country.
We have Massachusetts. And we have trails and parks.
There you go.
Oh, it's a beautiful place.
It's just
A road map.
lovely. I've seen pictures. It looks wonderful. I like to be on the water though, Dan. I need to be on the water.
Why? What is the thing that people have with water?
I get my place in Florida is on the water. I like the water. I like boats. I love the water. I'll pay an extra $500,000 to be in the water as opposed to one block back.
Yeah.
It just means I relax. I see dolphins and manatees, and I'm happy. Yeah, you do. That's true. That is true.
Deer.
Yep.
You know,
And chickens.
I lived on water in Newcastle.
I figured you did.
I just didn't get it.
Okay.
That's why Doug's
Oh boy, that probably cost a few shekels.
It's not, people don't want that out. It's only 9 feet above sea level.
Okay.
I'm afraid of it.
I have a place 3 feet above sea level in Florida. Well, I had a place. The last storm. No, my place is fine. The second floor, the first floor got washed out.
Yeah.
We can't meet the new FEMA codes. They want a carport, so you have to tear the whole place down. Now it's going to be 5 to 10 million for the new places. I don't have your type money, so I will get my $1 million and be out of there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
That's a pretty good deal.
no. I wanted to die there.
Oh, boy. Big time for this. I have to make a decision. About to be.
Daly, are you ready?
I think so.
Come on down. Yeah, we're lopsided. The boat is tipping. Can you guys even it out?
Sure what this means.
Oh boy, I'm funny. Senate Commerce is back in session. SB 101 will be heard, and we have Daly Freenet testifying on behalf of, who's your senator? Avard. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Daly Freenet. I'm the Senate Majority Caucus Director. I'm here today to introduce Senate Bill 101 on behalf of Senator Avard. This bill proposes a change to the penalty for an owner of a manufactured housing park who sells or transfers a park and fails to comply with RSA 205-A:22. This bill provides additional legal remedies to the park residents in such instances. The current law has been in place since 1989 and states that those found in violation of it are liable to the tenants in the amount of $10,000 or 10% of the total sales price. This bill increases the penalty to $25,000 or 25% of the total sales price, whichever is greater. The current penalty is insignificant enough that park sellers have contracted to cover the penalty in the sale to other investors. This allows the seller to avoid the long-standing policy of the New Hampshire legislature to allow manufactured housing residents to preserve and stabilize their housing future by collectively preserving the land under their homes as a not-for-profit organization. The law as currently written strips all other legal rights and remedies for manufactured housing residents. In instances where tenants have gone to court to enforce the current penalty provision, the court has required only the residents that are named as plaintiffs to share in the penalty, and subsequently, the park owner raises the rent to cover any amount that they were required to repay. Overall, residents should be entitled to lien the property to prevent a sale until their rights can be enforced and given the right to request specific performance. Land is unique, the land your home sits on even more so. The opportunity to set the sale aside should be allowed. Allowing residents to present their case before a court and allowing a judge to decide if the statute has been violated prior to the sale of the land under their homes is far more equitable than the current strong-arm tactics that currently gives the rights to the park seller and none to the residents. With that, I thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I'll defer any questions to Senator Avard, and I'm sure that there's some folks behind me who will be able to speak to it as well.
Okay, then I had tons of questions for you, but we'll let them go. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Tara Reardon. Hi, Tara. Good to see you again. So I'm assuming we can do it different. We can do it the way we're in. I can let you read testimony. Just talk to me. I love talking to me, not reading. And I already had questions for Daley. Could I start in and do it backwards? Okay, so we're just gonna do it backwards because no one else does it this way. Okay.
Thank you.
Off drop.
Okay.
So I'll answer questions.
I'll be gentle and give you short questions. So Mike, just really quick ones. In the last 19 or 20 years, are there any violations?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's a good one word. I like that. So I'm aware of Whispering Pines 20 years ago. And so how many cases is this been?
In my testimony, I have 3 more as examples
Okay.
of how the statute is violated. But those are just examples. There are others.
Okay, we're gonna save your voice. So, one of the problems I noticed, and it may not be a problem, you can tell me if it isn't, where single residents could file, so you got one person in the whole place, could object on their own and tie up a seller for years. So is that really a fair change in the law?
I would actually prefer right now in a court case that I sat through in Stratford County.
Okay.
It's very difficult for these residents to sue their former landlord or their current landlord. I would prefer that the residents be allowed, because they want to buy the property and they've formed an association, a consumer cooperative under 301A, that the law actually allow them to sue in the cooperative's name as the association on behalf of the residents that are members. It would be easier for the residents than being named as individual plaintiffs.
Last question, thank you. And again, it can be really short. So why don't we let the New Hampshire Housing Association, why don't we give them a chance to clean it up? And why haven't they brought this forward?
I had a conversation with Mark Tay just now in the hallway. This is the original legislation that was filed in 1989. I think the collection of the violations and the different ways that it's been violated has brought it to a head, and it has happened a couple of times more recently that the residents, it really indicates the residents are being taken advantage of.
Okay. Now you can roll. Thank you for taking my questions first.
Thank you, Senator. You have my written testimony. I'll dispense with who we are and all the wonderful things that the Community Loan Fund does. I think we talked about that last week, but let me go straight to the 3 examples of how the statute is being violated, because you have that, the rest of that in writing. And I gave you a little handout that actually goes with each one. So the first one you'll see is an affidavit of one of our employees. This was a suit. The tenants were a community called Jack and Jill. They had formed a cooperative. They were having conversations with their owner. They hadn't come to an agreement. And we had reminded the seller a couple of times that when he got a purchase and sale, he needed to give that to the residents, and that's what the law allows. They have the ability to match. One day they found out that the property had already been sold, and had been sold to another park owner who happened to be an attorney too in the Seacoast. And it ended up that in that court case, that attorney was representing the seller. So the buyer was the seller's attorney in that case. The 7 residents that dared come forward had a small amount of money. They got 1/30 of the amount. So to answer your question, one tenant, when they file suit, they get whatever number of units is in there as the penalty. And this seller, in fact, only paid 7/30 of that penalty, that 10% of the purchase price, and their rent went up immediately afterwards. So there was no win for the residents in there, and it is terrifying for residents to come forward like that and sue the person that owns the land under their home. This is really uniquely situated housing, but a really important kind of housing. So that was the first one. The second sheet that I've given you, stapled sheet that says indemnification agreement, is something that was provided to us in another case where in advance of the purchase and sale, in dealing with the residents, the buyer had already indemnified the seller for not only the penalty that they would pay, but any other damages. and the attorney's fees. It even allowed for them to use their attorney. They waived the conflict. Jim Bianco, who was the attorney for the Manufactured Housing Park Owners Association at the time, was the named attorney, and they agreed in advance that his fees were reasonable. So once again, the residents whose homes are sitting on that land, and it's the biggest asset they have ever owned, and they do not have other housing choices if they lose that, and were never a part of that conversation. It was all just contracted around them because the penalty is small enough to be meaningless. The third example I give you is actually a redacted credit memo from when these residents did get to purchase their home, but the land under their homes, but not until their park owner sold it to somebody else, who then said to the residents, go ahead and sue me if you want. Your purchase price of the park is going to go up by that amount if you do that. And in fact, the price that man bought it for and the price that he eventually sold it to the residents for was over $100,000 more. And they were powerless to do anything because the only thing the present statute gives them is that 10% penalty. It absolutely ties their hands. So I think those are just three good examples of how this is not a deterrent for park sellers and buyers. Go ahead.
Just a question for you. So you're saying the penalty is de minimis. These parks can vary from size of like 10 units to hundreds and hundreds.
392.
300. So a 300 park place would be worth tens of millions of dollars?
Correct.
So the penalty would be in a million plus, right? So a big park, that's a big penalty, or you're saying the purchase price is so big that it still means nothing.
So in a big park, that means each resident that dares come forward would still get one 392nd portion of that penalty. They're not getting any more because it's a big park, because the ruling in the Jack and Jill case was that there were other plaintiffs that potentially could come forward, so that he was only going to award that percentage that represented that plaintiff there. So I think in the testimony last week, I'll just conclude with one of the residents from an Exeter community, a really well-run, healthy community, pointed out that it's classism. It's a different set of rules for these low, moderate income people when it comes to real estate. And it's a different set of rules for people who live in manufactured housing. We don't do this to people in condos or homeowners associations. And the residents are not looking for a more of a leg up. They're just looking for a level playing field to use the legal rights and remedies that are already available to everybody else under New Hampshire law. And I guess the other portion is there's lots and lots of parks that change hands. The residents, but lots of times, decide not to buy the park when it's put up for sale. It's as likely as not that residents turn it down, especially in the really large parks. And there are a lot of really good park owners there that comply with the law all the time to a T. The latest that we've seen is they actually don't give notice to New Hampshire Housing Finance, so we never find out about it, so we never get any information to those residents. But I don't think the good park owners that are conducting themselves well ever have to worry about whether this penalty is $1 or $1 million, because they're not going to be susceptible to it. But it is, in fact, those that are willfully trying to end run and in the face of people who can't normally seek legal help they're the ones that are taken advantage of. And it's about housing, and we really need to protect this housing.
Thank you, Mr. Redden. Does anyone have any questions?
If I could make one more comment, one of a resident in the park that was actually the park that was the indemnification agreement that I shared with you had a statement. He couldn't be here this morning. And it says, investors are gradually putting more burden on government to solve housing problem for low income because families are forced out of their homes because of escalating rents from profit-only minded REITs. The penalty for not obeying the law is no incentive at all to deter owners from collusion with investor buyers with the escalating value of parks. Manufactured homeowners across America are losing their homes and only investment every day because of predatory investors. New Hampshire needs to stay at the forefront and to get even better at protecting homeowners' rights. The possibilities of homeowners being able to bring suit when not being able to exercise their rights under law should also come with penalties of attorney's fees, because in no case can they afford to fight back. Don't let this affordable housing for low-income families slip away. And that's Kim Capon from the Medville Cooperative in Goffstown, New Hampshire.
Thank you, Ms. Reardon. Nope.
Thank you.
You're all set.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
great day. Thanks for your testimony. Karen Susie. Oh, not speaking. I apologize. I'm sorry. Mark Tay.
Mr. Chairman, Senators,
Tay.
my name is Mark Tay, and I'm speaking in opposition to Senate Bill 101. I'm an attorney. I'm a manufactured housing park owner. I represent manufactured housing communities in my capacity as a practicing attorney, and I represent them, including sales of their manufactured housing communities, so I'm intimately familiar with that process. I'm also president of the New Hampshire Manufactured Housing Association, and I've served on the State Board of Manufactured Housing since 2004, and I'm chair of that board since 2007. You all know, I think by now, that a seller is required to notify each resident, the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, and now most recently, the New Hampshire Manufactured Housing Association of an acceptable offer. I want to deviate a little bit from my written testimony, which I believe you all have. I have not encountered a situation where a park owner has tried to skirt the process. I'm surprised. I haven't heard anything until this morning of any kind of instance of a park owner just ignoring it. The penalty can be severe. In the last 2 years, I had the lowest sale I had to and actually it was the loan fund who was involved in that sale, was 1.7 million. I had another sale was 24 million. So $2,400,000 is a pretty significant penalty. I think there's been essential historic compliance with the law. And I believe the situation that Ms. Reardon mentioned in her testimony, the lawyer who represented the seller and then bought it himself. If we'd have known about that, we meaning the New Hampshire Manufactured Housing Association, I know this lawyer very well. And there's nothing wrong with picking up the phone and saying, what are you doing? And we don't have that opportunity because we don't know about these things. Suddenly they emerge as a surprise. And, part of what we do is to educate our members. Part of what we also do is to educate park owners in general as to what their obligations are and to their obligation of good faith and fair dealing. The statutory scheme also requires an affidavit. And most title companies that I've dealt with require the park owner's affidavit that he has complied with the process set forth in the statutes. Those are title issues. The most concerning part of this is to permit any resident to file a court case to prevent the sale of property for potentially years. And under this scheme proposed, a resident can record a lien on the property. Residents can also sue 3-year statute of limitations. So that property is clouded for 3 years. I don't have an explanation going back to why someone would skirt this. one possible situation would be where someone dies and it takes a little bit to get an appointment, a fiduciary appointment from the probate court, but you have 9 months to pay your estate taxes. And if you can't sell that property, I'm guessing, because I haven't run into it before. I don't know. I'm like to get some more detail from the prior witness. But that could be an explanation, but I just don't know. But relatively recently, in a community where I represented the seller, I gave the required notice, and the residents were considering buying the park. There was already a residents association, a very active resident association in that community, so there was no necessity to organize them. The loan fund got involved as the lender. That's what they do. The president wanted to buy the park, and most of the residents did not want to buy it. And then we got a letter from their lawyer saying residents are going to buy the park. Okay. But then the seller is hearing the residents don't really want to buy this. You have to figure this out because we're going to lose our third-party buyer. So finally I pushed and I said, we need some clarification on this issue. And we got a letter at the last day, the 60-day period, saying, well, they're not going to buy it after all. So we were tied up, at least for that long. But the problem with this is that president could hijack everybody in that community because he wanted to buy the park, file an action, tie the property up for years, and the seller would be out of luck. The bills currently pending and recent legislation kind of expose a little bit of what's going on in communities, organizing tenants to purchase, major governance issues after acquisition, and the general discontent of many of the residents in resident-owned communities. And I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying there's discontent and there's disorganization in how these associations are formed for purchase. Park owners don't want to be drawn into this chaos at this time. And again, the significant title issues that result from this kind of legislation is very concerning to anyone who's aware that this legislation is being proposed. I think the bottom line is that a seller is going to want to include his residents or her residents in that pool of potential purchasers because they're a likely purchaser. So if you want to sell anything, your house, your car, whatever you want to sell, you'll sell it to anybody who has the money and who can do it. And so that's why I'm very surprised to have run into this kind of issue that has been presented to you. Thank you for your time, and I respectfully ask that you hold the bill. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. Any questions? No, you're looking
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thank you, Council. And that is it, unless there's anyone else who wants to speak to SB 101. Bob Clegg, come on down. How you doing, sir?
Good, yourselves?
Doing well.
I just want to put it in perspective. In my more profitable life, I am a developer. And I can tell you that if I find somebody who's about to get a divorce and his wife hasn't filed yet, who wants to sell me a park at $24 million, I'm going to do it and pay the $240,000 because I got a deal. Now, understand a lot of these parks are great future high-rise developments for apartments. So when somebody goes in and buys one, they give the people inside 18 months to get out, raise their rent so they can help pay the engineering fees, and the people inside have nothing. $24 million sounds like a lot of money, but it depends on how many people are in the park. So I just want to point out that it is feasible. And if people don't do it, then raising the penalty higher shouldn't be a problem because we're only going to catch the real bad guys. Thank you.
Bob, on the 24 million, you said, did you say 2.4 million? That's what it would be, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, yes, thank you. Okay, we'll recess, end Senate Bill 101. Then we'll take 2-minute break, 2-3, or lose 2. Okay, oh, the animal, where did I lose the answer? Thank you. So let's see what's easy from last week. 53 refrigerants, that was easy. Did you mind the skip back? This is really, it's really Bradley's. On the, did you mind the study committee? You don't have to like it. Okay. So those 2 I think are easy. Let's see how I think of these. Thank you. Raise the 25%. Yes.
to executive session.
Do I s- Good. We'll start with 99. The responsibilities for the insurers in conducting reviews of the operation of administrators. Do you want to add anything to it since it's your bill, Senator?
No, I'll make a motion ought to pass.
Second.
I move consent.
Oh, we have to vote.
We got to vote first. All in favor of the first motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Now I'll move consent.
Second.
All in favor of consent, say aye.
Aye.
Good. Moves to consent. That was easy.
Taking it up.
Senator Rishardi, it's her bill. Okay, if we can only do them all that way. Okay, now we get SB 41, which Senator Vard had. It's a well-meaning bill on age discrimination. The problem is we do have a protected class in New Hampshire, and that does include age discrimination. However, as long as the government can meet the rational basis test and show that there's a reason that's valid, they have this, which would be that either for old people, that as you lose your reflexes and slow down, your likelihood of getting into accidents, as shown by actuary tables, increases with your age. So they do have a rational basis for having such discrimination, much the same as they do with young people. More apt to get into accidents, they charge them more. So that being the case, I don't see the need for a study committee, and I would motion for ITL.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion for consent?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I guess I'll bring this one out. This Cinder may have problems with me.
When you're building
Okay.
ITL on consent.
We're gonna do SB 98 relative to delinquent payments on accounts. It was Senator Murphy's bill that he just brought for us, raising the penalty from 100 to 250. Senator Innes did point out that this still may be a de minimis amount, but as the stakeholders all agreed with this,
I'll second that.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Move consent.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Beautiful.
Unanimous. Oh, did we move consent? Did I miss that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Things go so fast. Senator Susie, do one of you guys want to take it out? Awesome.
Senator Chambliss.
Okay, we're going on to 102. And we have an amendment coming out, a committee amendment on moving the two dates to June the 24th. I think that is it. Is there other changes, Senator?
Pass the bill.
Oh, we do have to do that. Would
I
be
move
first.
not to pass.
Second. Do I have a second? Good. Okay. All in favor?
Well, we have the amendment.
We're going to change the two dates after we pass the underlying bill to June 24th to give them time.
2024.
June 2024.
Amendment.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think on page 2,
Yes.
the 4 is probably.
What line?
Roman numeral 1, line 2. Yeah, Roman numeral 2. Roman numeral 29, maybe? On page 1.
Let me look.
And then we do the same thing. Right. And then repeal. And then my question is, would we be repealing before we know the result of the, so I could move it to June 24th. No, but should we wait on that whole section number 3? Right, the report has to be completed by June 24.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would be repealed. Oh, got it. I mean, I guess you could say the report is due June 1st, and it's repealed on June 2nd. Or we could do 29 or 30. Yeah, but that's fine, that's great.
Just want to make sure we're not.
Okay, the first and,
Line 29 would be, on page 1 would be the first change to
Yep.
June 2024.
Mhm.
And then line 2 on page 2, June 2024.
yep. Good, Senator Ennis?
Yeah. Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Senator Ennis?
Yes, sir. Well, we have.
Yes.
The underlying motion is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're good.
Thank you. So we need to
It's been.
vote on it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, beautiful. Motion passes on consent. I think I was giving it to Senator Ennis.
Which is that?
I was giving you that to take it out.
Oh, sure. Fine.
No,
I love Jones Act, Bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, SB 100. Okay, this was the 2 weeks that Murphy had just brought. I had problems with it. I understood his extreme example of if you started on a Tuesday and quit the following Monday.
Oh, that.
That's sort of an extreme case where you probably wouldn't be entitled to that. On the other hand, I would like to respect the employee who comes to me as an employer and says, after 10 years, I'm going to leave and I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. I would think that you're sort of entitled to, you were polite to him, he should be polite to you and recognize the 2 weeks. Does anyone else have thoughts on this?
I would second that.
Okay. Dan, do Senator and the wish to discuss?
No.
No, okay.
No, I mean, it's salaried employees only. I think it's okay, but it's fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you moved for an ITL and we had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One. Okay, Senator Ennis
Move
opposes.
consent?
No, we lost it.
Sorry. That's
Oh, you changed?
I screwed
Okay.
that up.
Oh, okay.
Senator Susie, would you like to take this out?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, SB 46. Do we wish to discuss it at all? The electronic payment. Senator Rishardi, your thoughts? I know you had a lot of thoughts on this.
Well, I would like to put back in what's been struck out where there's consent to payment of wages.
What line you on? I'm
The
sorry.
lines around 16 and 17
On page.
and 18
Okay, so-
shall include the terms and conditions. I feel like the people should be able to have the terms and conditions, but I'm up for any other thoughts on that.
Senator Shanley, Senator Susie, other thoughts?
Sure. So this we've seen before.
Yep.
Once again, it completely changes the power dynamics, so what an employee today could choose, and very, very, very few people still opt for a paper check, as far as I know. Will no longer be an option. The employer makes the decision as to what form somebody has to accept. But beyond that, it used to be that at least when you, as Senator Rishardi pointed out, at least when you obtained consent from the employee to accept the payroll card, you provided them with the terms and conditions of the account. And now you're not letting them decide whether they want to have another option. You're forcing the payroll card on them, and you're not required to provide them with terms and conditions of the use of the card. So it's, to me, quite egregious that we would be doing that to someone who is working to the conditions of their employment.
So if I understand how we should follow it, Senator Rishardi has amended it.
Well,
On the underlying bill. Okay,
I'll move on to that.
I'll second.
Can I just ask?
Sure.
I'm sorry. Senator, can you just repeat for me, please? the amendment would be?
Well, I would like it to say that the written consent by the, let's look at the line 17, where it says the written consent signed by the employee shall include the terms and conditions of the payroll card account option. Where it's scratched out, I would like to say it will provide. So the amendment should say it will provide the employees with the terms and conditions of the payroll card account options.
Okay.
And then I could support this.
Mr. Chairman, if I can ask Senator Susie. Senator Susie, does that address a concern of yours or no?
It addresses one of the concerns. I think it should say the employer
Okay.
shall provide.
Mm-hmm.
So it addresses one of the concerns, but still fundamentally, you are taking away what was an employee's choice away from them. And I have a problem with that.
Understood. I understand your concerns. I don't agree.
I do too, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it a little bit.
So today, if you become an employee of ABC Company,
Susie Enterprises. Yeah.
ABC, you as an employee get to select which one of the options for payment of your wages your employer offers, which may be a pay card, which is direct deposit, and I think 98% of the people select that.
Yep.
But there are some people that still want a check. They no longer would be able to. The employer could mandate. Now, an employer could still say, okay, I'm going to grandfather the people that get a paper check, but somebody new.
I thought it was already in here for grandfathering, if you're already existing. If I had read it right last night.
I believe so.
I believe it, so that you're grandfathered in, you get your check. This is just for new employees.
Okay.
You would ask me, I should have highlighted.
I think there was testimony that that could be an option, but I don't
Okay,
think. it
maybe I
required-
just read the testimony last night.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of.
I like the idea of these cards. To me, it's money. It's the, if you hand me a check on a Friday afternoon, I can't cash it. It would, and even if I could, it would take time to clear. I get cash here. I believe Senator Susie doesn't like it because she wants you to get the whole amount, or is that you, Senator?
Well,
Where's-
no, it's that a lot of people don't use banks. Some of the people I represent, particularly in the inner city, use convenience stores that do check cashing and do money transmission. They are what's called unbanked. They don't, because of whatever personal reason, use banks or credit unions, so
So they wouldn't have the ability to get cash, is your point.
the employer would determine whether they get the pay card or not. That's the issue.
But if they get the pay card, it's as good as money. You can go to any ATM at 7 at night on
But an
Friday.
ATM isn't
You
going
only
to
get
let you withdraw
$500.
a $2,000 paycheck.
Right.
No, but if you had a check, you're not gonna probably get the funds for $2,000 either.
No,
It's a-
Yeah,
most banks will clear up to 5.
Well, but if the bank is
At an
closed,
ATM
you it wouldn't
machine
make a
on Friday
difference.
night? No.
Well, but they have to have an arrangement with the bank to clear it because they can't withhold your wages.
Right.
The employer is required to pay your full wages.
Sure, they give you the check at 5 o'clock on a Friday. You can't cash that check anywhere. You can put it in your thing, but
Well,
it's
yes, you
gonna
can.
take.
You can go to a check casher.
You're gonna,
Give something for that people do.
then you're gonna pay, yeah, your
People do.
2, 3, I don't know what they charge. Anyways, I think that the vast majority of this is gonna work.
And I-
It's like cash.
But I guess that's my problem is if the vast majority are already opting for direct deposit and pay cards anyway, then why are we penalizing the 1 or 2% that aren't?
Because I'm gonna have to set up a check system at my work for one employee, and this could be very
Could be your
expensive.
best employee.
Could be, but it could be a lot of money, and I'm the employer, and I'm giving him the terms to set these. And I know you wanna give it to the employee, I understand.
I Appreciate Senator's compliments. I do.
So at the moment, we have, do we have our amendment? Where are we at?
We have her amendment on the floor.
On the floor?
We do. I just want to clarify, on page 2, lines 14 and 15, we already have the existing language. So I know we want to include, it will provide the employee the terms and conditions of the payroll. But it doesn't look.
I think it would have to come at the end of line 22, right? You would insert that the employer would be required. I mean, if you're trying to make it work grammatically, right? You're giving them the opportunity to provide bank information for direct deposit. Failure to do so results in the pay card, and then
Senator, could the check cashing operations be set up to accept these cards and return cash to the employee?
I don't know. It would be a question for the banking department.
Senator, can we put this one?
Yeah, we can put this up.
Yes, let's do
Fine.
that. Let's figure that out.
Sounds
That
good.
might remove a significant hurdle for some folks.
I believe that is it for today, unless I miss something. Okay.
Yep.
I will withdraw the pass.
Second. Thank you, Senator. Did we have any other bills we wanted to discuss that I'm missing? Or didn't think of?
Did we find out if 53 needs an amendment or not?
53?
The innovation manufacturing.
I still.
Okay, that's fine.
So I think we're, all we can do, Lang, we never saw his stuff, right?
No.
No, that's what I was just asking about, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Okay.
Okay,
All right,
come out of executive session.
so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. And how's the vote? Everyone want to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So everybody has a consent one.
Thank you.
Email by 4:40,
So, on that one, the banking department, somebody might be, if we could get some information from them.